Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning. This is your host, Llorraine Neithardt, and you are listening to Venus Unplugged. And what we do here in this realm of Venus is we talk about all things Venusian, whether it be in our myths, in our dreams, in our life, the archetype of Venus, and how she operates in our lives, and what myth or hymn we've been exploring is the hymn of Inanna, Queen of Heaven and Earth. And this is hymn probably was about 3,000 years before Christ. This hymn, this belief, this awakening, this relationship to Inanna, she's quite a gal, this Inanna is. I mean, I particularly love this epic myth, and it's truly worth studying. I mean, you could spend a good 5 years studying this mythos and its many implications. And so we have been looking at Inanna, and so for today's festivities, I thought we'd, a tour of duty in the underworld to put a little spark in our heart and spring in your feet. So Inanna, who's also the goddess, queen of creation / destruction, not creation and destruction. They're both one and the same, and this is part of the magnificence of this image, which later becomes Venus or Aphrodite. Okay, there's Inanna and Ishtar, all right, Queen of Heaven and Earth. So she's both. It's not just the good; it's the everything. And so Inanna has, if you listen to the other episodes, so Inanna, she has fiercely owned her powers. She has found her honey man. She has brought the laws of civilization, which is called the Me, M-E, to her people. She's created the sacred marriage bed and the rights of king and earth when the goddess weds the land, and has thoroughly enjoyed herself, which is what I adore. It is with absolute, total abandon. And whenever there is a sense of abandon, that's Venus. That is her primal force, the capacity to just abandon, to just let go, to just be. Venus is never looking over her shoulder to see who's talking about it or cares. Because the caring, and she's an archetype. So it's a primal principle that's invisible, and we don't know it until the fall. We fall in love, or we fall into depressions, or there's always a fall. And what the fall is always about, loss of ego. When there's a fall, the ego is no longer in charge, which is why it doesn't like those states. So in this hymn, she knows who she is. And in one of the first episodes in this hymn, when she is given her powers through one of the sky gods of wisdom, they're whooping it up, they're partying, they're drinking and partying, and he's like, yeah, I know how to take this, yeah, you can have this. And in the morning when he wakes up and he says, give me my scepter and give me my crown, it's like, his beloved sidekick and servant says, hey, you gave it to Inanna. So he goes down to Inanna and says, give it back. And she says, no. And right there, that's chutzpah. I love that about her. No, you gave it to me. No, you blessed this. All right. And I'm not giving it back. And isn't that a great attitude when it's appropriate? So now it's time for her to journey into the underworld to meet her dark sister, Ereshkigal, which we covered a little bit, because all of this it's just a taste. Because this mythos is just unbelievably rich. It's like just amazing when each time you go over it, and each time you read it, and then you feel it, and you dance it, and you move it. Just delicious. But before she's willing, she willingly chooses to descend. Now catch that, willingly, which I suggest is the best form of etiquette we can have. When called, go willingly, or choose it. Say, okay, I will take the loss of this in order to understand, in order, it's just like, everyone wants light, but light is blinding. And without some shadow, without some darkness, you can't see form. So the bright light and the dark shadow, without one another, nothing can exist. We actually can't create our illusionary world that we create here. So she's willing and chooses to descend, and I will read you the part of the poem which is exquisite, where she has no power. She's queen of heaven and earth, but zilcho in the underworld. But she brokers a deal with the sky gods that if she's not back in 3 days, they need to send the posse. So she's not dumb. She knows where she has no power. And she's got plan B, which is always good to have. And so she leaves her king lover, Dumizi, I love saying that. It's like kissing, Dumizi, to mind the throne. And I was thinking, who do you leave your throne to when you've got to go off and do something? I'm not saying your power. It's the seat of power, or the seat of her sovereignty. Do you leave it without being cared for? Do you put someone else in that seat of your sovereignty? I'm not saying that they can't have their sovereignty, but, when you put people in a position of power or give people a position of power, now it's important to have transferences. It is important because that's how we get to know ourselves, through the eyes of others. So there is this part of where we naturally give our gold away, but you don't do it forever. Go over your life and just see where you've left your gold and symbolically take it back, all right? And so she is told that the ways of the underworld are perfect. And that's definitely sage advice to anyone at the time of our descent. The ways of the underworld are perfect. And that is a powerful image and a powerful state and teaching that when we're entering a new phase, when we are, in a wounding or in a grief, heartbroken, the ways are perfect. We don't know it, but the way of that realm is perfect. And if we can be still and consciously make the sacrifice by sacrifice, it means making sacred to. Doesn't mean, cutting your hair or giving something up that doesn't really have any meaning. So Ainana knows. What she knows is that she does not know. That's pretty awesome. It's outstanding, as a matter of fact. And she knows that she does not know, and in and of that itself is pure genius, or just plain moxie. So she harnesses the wisdom of not knowing, of humility, and of that secret truth. Whenever it's the time of unknowing, know that you don't know. Because that is the way that we make ourselves receptive. So when we know that we don't know, it may save your life, because in not knowing, you are emptied, you're void, but also in a state of receptivity. And the pure feminine is receptivity. She goes consciously towards her own sacrifice. She knows what she's doing. She doesn't know what it's about, and she's not bringing any preconceived ideas or thoughts or knowing. So, this is from the Hymn of Ainana. It's from the book The First Love Stories by Diana Rookstein. So we leave Ainana off, and she's been whooping it up with her honey man. And as they're doing their sweet nothings, their pillow talk, this is how the hymn goes. And from the great above, she opened her ear to the great below. From the great above, the goddess opened her ear to the great below. From the great above, Ainana opened her ear to the great below. Now that's always interesting. When something is repeated 3 times, magic is afoot. Now, on one level, we look at it as, okay, you say something 3 times, hopefully in different ways, because people get annoyed. They think you're repeating it. But actually, what you're doing is the 3 times is once for the conscious mind, once for the unconscious, and once for the superconscious. And if we had more awareness of that, how often have we been told, you told me that. You don't have to tell me again. Well, actually, we do. We're just not doing it the right way. So we need to say it 3 times, but in perhaps 3 different ways. So it doesn't just sound like we're just repeating. And this is what this hymn, because these hymns are filled with magical coding and influences and suggestions. As in all great poetry, it is between the words that the gates of wisdom, all right? So she listens. And so what would that look like in your life? You listen. Is the inner child crying? Is the healthy or the animus figure that loves you struggling with the one that doesn't love you? Because when you want love on any level, you can give you a list of descriptions that may or may not work, right? Taste change. But ask for the one who knows how to love. Because you may get the perfect one, and perfect just means all our parts. It doesn't mean just the light. But if they don't know how to love, it doesn't matter. Or if you don't know how to love, it doesn't matter. So Ainana listens. She abandoned heaven and earth to descend into the underworld. The holy priestess of heaven abandoned her 7 temples and her 7 cities. 7 is a sacred number. It can be the 7 chakras, although there's many more chakras than 7. It can be the 7 planets that we know of, although there's more. So Inanna gathered together the me. Now remember, the me is the laws of civilization. She advised her trusted servant, Ninshabar, I am descending now to the underworld. If I do not return, go to Father Inal and the air god. If he will not help, go to Father Nana, the moon god. If he will not help, go to Father Inki. Father Inki is the god of wisdom. He knows the food of life. He knows the waters of life. And surely he will not let me die. Ninshabar heeds her words. So again, the 3 times. So these also represent 3 different aspects of the masculine. So when Inanna arrives at the gates of the underworld, she knocks loudly. She cried in a fierce voice, open the door, gatekeeper. Open the door, Neti. I alone would enter. So Neti entered the palace of Ereshkigal, and he said, my queen, a young woman, as tall as heaven, as wide as earth, as strong as the foundations of the city walls, waits outside the palace gates. She carries the me. She says she has come to witness the funeral rites. Now, Ereshkigal in the underworld is mourning the death of her husband, the bull god. So, when Ereshkigal, the queen of the underworld, heard this, she slapped her thigh and bit her lip. She took the matter into her heart and dwelt on it. Then she spoke, Neti, my chief gatekeeper of the underworld, bolt the 7 gates of the underworld. Then, one by one, open each gate a crack. Let Inanna enter, and as she enters, remove her royal garments. Let the holy priestess of heaven enter, bowed low. Neti opened the outer gate and said, come, Inanna, enter. When Inanna entered the first gate, the crown of her scepter was removed from her head. And Inanna asked, what is this? And she was told, quiet, Inanna. The ways of the underworld are perfect. They may not be questioned. Once again, brilliant. She is willing to suspend her powers in order to meet with dignity and respect to her shadow aspect. So when we're entering a new phase in our life or a new problem, and we go like, I know, worst attitude you can have. If you knew, you know what? You wouldn't be having that temper tantrum. I know, but I want it my way. I know. That's the way it is. That's the way the heaven is. That's the way the underworld is. But I want this. I know that psyche rules, that the unconscious motivates and everything, but I want it this way. So you don't know. Because when you know, there's a different attitude. It's a place of receptivity. There's nothing to know, and you know there's nothing to know. So you suspend opinions. Because most people don't think. They just have opinions. That's not thinking. So we see and we experience, and Ereshkigal Gal herself takes it into her heart. What's the best way to do this? It's not necessarily a punishment. It's like, no, you want to come to my house? Take your shoes off. So what does this mean? Her crown is taken. The symbolic meaning of that. So the crown, one of the things that certainly the crown can be is the crown chakra. So giving up your thoughts and giving up the spiritual knowing, because the spiritual knowing is in the heavens. It's spiritual. It's not going to get you a hot dog in the underworld. It's useless. It's worthless. Her wisdom, she prepares to know. She's not like diving into the underworld without, a rescue mission put into place. Same is true with us. Okay, I'm about to do this. If I don't return in 72 hours, 3 days, again, there's magic. 72 is 9. 9 is the number of completion. 9 is also the triple goddess. It's a full cycle. So often, if you can, and you're struggling with whatever you're struggling with, give it 3 days. Shut up. You don't know. That's why you're in conflict. And within those 3 days, be able to imagine yourself of going to this place of unknowing, which for the ego is hell. And by the way, when you tell somebody to go to hell, this is where you tell them to go. Go meet your dark sister, Ereshkigal. She'll teach you a couple of things. So in this unknowing, but it's also a container. She gives it a magic number, a magic seal, because she knows it will be a full cycle in 72 hours, in 3 days. If I'm not back, send the posse. So this is really cosmic practicality. This is what common sense is about. She's also this goddess of enormous common sense. She knows she can't override other realms. She doesn't have the right and she doesn't have the power, and she's not going to. She can go and learn. She can go and have the experience. So that's what the descent motif. And of course, we all know those descent motifs. When we make a descent or make a choice of descent is when it's when we introvert, or when the descent or the introversion is in service to life. So when there's times that we need to be still and just quiet and shut everything down. I mean, it's wonderful if you go to a retreat, but you can just go home, be still, cut everything off, and then see all what bubbles up inside that magic little mystery world of one's mind and psyche. And if we do this by choice, because it's necessary to make these descents, we don't have to get mugged in the middle of our day or in the middle of our life by the underworld. It says, really? No, you haven't paid your dues. You haven't spent some time with your shadow. You haven't lived in dark unknowing. You have not allowed yourself to be the humus, the dark earth, the receptivity, principle of yin. Being still. So, America is particularly a thinking, extroverted country. So that's why there's, we've got a lot going on here. But we need to, and for an extrovert, to introvert is a nightmare. What do you mean? What do you mean you could do nothing? What do you mean you're not? A dear friend of mine just says, because I love to introvert. It's like it's the natural state of being for me. And introversion does not mean you're shy. It just means you know when to fold them and you know when to run. And she just goes like, oh God, she's hanging out with Persephone. She'll be back. So my dear friends, no. I disappear, but I don't disappear from them. I go in. I have to. Otherwise, my whole cosmology gets all bent out of shape. And so the ways of the underworld are perfect. And we can begin to make those ways conscious. When we go into the downward way, the yin way, to the earth, to the darkness of humanity, to the secrets of sexuality. The power brokers don't want anyone to know this. Or be still and know that I am God. God's not a person. I mean, an archetype. God is actually you. God is the word we use for the divinity within ourselves. And the ways are perfect. So, in this unveiling, in this process, this goddess of heaven and earth, this Stella Goddess, submits herself. And her unveiling. She's going to have no power. So Jung writes that undressing symbolizes, because when she gets into the underworld, there goes her robes, there goes everything. And when you dream of being naked, that's actually a good dream. Feels a little funky, because in our naked state, the inner beauty is the soul, and it's the child of the sun and the moon. And in alchemy, the Negredo is also represented by the garment of darkness. So then the Negredo in alchemy is what we need. It's the energy we need to start an individuation process. So people usually start a growth from a wounding. So she enters these gates, and the gates are, in some interpretations, the gates of the 7 planetary positions, which Inanna Ishtar would move into conjunction on her descent and return. The rising Venus, or Venus return. And to go more deeply, this can also be the chakras. This is also the psychology of the chakras and the planets and their instinctual meaning. So the crown chakra, your nimbus or your halo, or you can't bring your light. You can't bring that in. Leave it. It serves no place in the underworld. So any initiatory stage or sacrificial way, it's like in any other myth, there's always this sacrifice. Or in dreams, there's always sacrifice. We wake up kind of thinking, I had a nightmare. No, you had a sacrifice. You sacrifice something in the dream, because the dream tells tells us what we don't know about ourselves. So that's a loss right there. I didn't know that about myself. Forget that I didn't know it. I didn't know it about myself. Like, wow, now it's real. Oh, you mean me? Oh. That's when people get it. It's not real until it happens to you. And then from there, hopefully, after you've come up from the tour of duty in the underworld, you've got a greater understanding. So you can sit with people who are mourning or are heartbroken and not have to wear your crown of knowing and just be still. So there's a lot Ainana is going to be exposed to in these 7 gates, and we will continue next week with the 7 gates. Bye-bye.
Progressive presents Mindfulness with Flow.
Before you lies a beautiful meadow. In that meadow, Progressive Direct has placed its auto insurance rates alongside those of competitors. You select the lowest rate and feel a great sense of calm. A great sense of...
Compare Progressive Direct rates with competitors' rates so you can rest easy. Visit Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. Vary based on how you buy. Vary based on how you buy. Vary based on how you buy.